No Guts, No Galaxy is recorded in front of a live studio audience. This is an adult podcast containing adult language. Consider yourself warned.
Hello, mech fans. This is Duncan Fisher, and today I have a special treat for you. A few days ago, I was interviewed by a FedCom News Service sports writer who covers mech matches. He was a fine sort, the kind you'd expect to find on the Inner Sphere's premier gaming world. FCN was gracious enough to provide me a copy of the interview, and today I am going to share my two favorite questions and answers. So enjoy this short trip towards getting to know me just a little bit better.
Mr. Fisher, in your opinion, what is the best part of a mech match?
I'm glad you asked, Rob.
My name is Patrick.
Right you are. But as for your question, I'd have to say that the middle of a match is when I'm most into it. That point where anything goes and nothing is for certain. The end of a match has only one outcome, and the winner is decided. But I live for those brief minutes in the middle where any mech on the field could score a lucky hit, or a mech jock could reach a point of inspiration and do something really special with a battle mech that nobody has seen before. For me, that's the best part of what you can expect in the Solaris arenas.
One final question, Mr. Fisher. Could you give us your opinion of the recent concerns being raised regarding arena barrier safety measures and the question of continuing to allow live spectators for matches in the Steiner Stadium?
Well, Rob,
Patrick.
Yeah, that sounds right. As I was saying, I believe in public safety and in the safety measures put in place by the Solaris 7 Gaming Commission. I think all true Solaris game fans know that there is no way to 100% guarantee that everyone will remain safe while watching a bloody, violent, metal-mangling mech fight, and I think they like it that way. So if you're hinting that the mech matches aren't safe enough for fans to watch live, I've got to disagree with you, Rob. Personally, I think the current detonator grid system in the Coliseum works fine. Besides, if I know only one thing, it's that here on Solaris 7, the fans are just as much a part of the action as the mechs, the jocks, the wagering, and, well, Duncan Fisher. Well, that reporter didn't like everything that came out of my mouth, but after the interview, I think he left with a better understanding of why we love mech matches and why I love Solaris 7 and its fans. So remember, folks, safety is everyone's concern, and a good barrier goes a long way towards preventing accidents, no matter what the activity. This has been the Duncan Fisher Minute.
The Duncan Fisher Minute is written by David Martin, with additional material by George Ledoux. Produced and performed by George Ledoux and Voices in My Head Productions. Based on characters created by Ferret Baudouin and George Ledoux. Any similarity to persons living or dead is ridiculous.
You probably thought it was normal, just a little off. The truth is, at one time I was, but now I'm a robot.
Hey everyone, Darren aka Bombadil here. Just wanted to again say thank you for all of your support. It is always appreciated and very much essential for our survival. As always, if you have the means, please head on over to our website at NoGutsNoGalaxy.net and make a simple donation, or even click through our Amazon link before you do your online shopping and get us a little kickback that way. And again, if you have any family, friends, or coworkers that you think might be interested in Battletech or MechWarrior, please help spread the word. Today we have the second part of a special 3-part interview with Brian Ekman, creative director at Piranha Games, so sit back and enjoy. You're listening to the Gamecasting Broadcast Network. Live from the Outreach Studios around the world, this is a No Guts, No Galaxy podcast. And now, your host, Phil, a.k.a. Sean Lang.
But one thing you were talking about as far as immersion with the skirmish mode, being a sort of realistic battle sense. Cockpit glass. You guys introduced this. Let me just clear this up to the nerd in me. It's actually ferro armor, but it's see-through. It's not really glass.
Translucent. But let me clear this up too. It's also make-believe.
Whatever, dude. This is the real world, man.
Sick bird.
Yeah. Just saying.
Yeah,
Whatever,
if we were to do it for real, you wouldn't have glass at all, and you'd be sweating your butt off inside of a sealed cockpit. So
hell yeah, I love it.
And you'd be looking through video monitors. It was actually a choice we made early on. Dennis and I sat down and we looked at what was lore and what was best for gameplay and art direction, and we just felt that having the glass was just a little bit more familiar for the average player. So anyhow, I've since seen it done in other games well, and I was like, that's actually pretty cool. So maybe we could adopt a different way of doing it, but right now I think we're kind of stuck where it is. Yes, it doesn't follow canon. I apologize for that, but
that's a whole nother actual discussion, because there's two different viewpoints on that. But I'm not going to get into that. But
it's just like mechs exploding, right?
Stack Poland. All right.
Now, personally, I love it. I know a few people have had some issues with the cockpit glass, but I'm all about immersion. I wish. I mean, I know you guys would have done it if you could, but I wish it was in it from the start, because then there wouldn't be the comparison. But I love it. Anything that makes the game more immersive to me. And honestly, when we get into battle and stuff, I don't even notice it. It's when I'm walking around before battle or whatever and specifically looking at it. But I love that factor. So what's the feedback been like?
The feedback's been, it's been mixed. I think, like you said, some people are just used to perfect vision, and so it's been a hindrance. It's definitely something that we're going to make optional. And, for all those guys out there trying to make movies and things like that, we apologize. That was definitely, it was kind of an oversight. I not allowing people to turn it off when they're filming. It was like, oh yeah, how, we missed that one. So we really want to make sure that we get that option in, so players can turn it off and get back to filming all those awesome videos. And it doesn't really affect gameplay. Sometimes I've seen it a couple times in in the city map where I'm like, I wish it wasn't there. It was just kind of blocking my vision. So I think we've got some tuning to do, but overall, I'm really happy with that immersion effect. And I think anybody appreciates that, loves it. Those core guys who are I always think back to like Quake 3, where they would turn down their resolution to the lowest setting. They would turn every graphical lighting option off. They don't care. All they want is 100 million frames per second. They just want to be the fastest player. For those guys, I can understand why it could be frustrating adding something like this at this stage, and we definitely want to address their concerns too.
Well, one of the issues with that, and you guys already cleared it up, was the whole being able to edit the user.cfg and get rid of the cockpit entirely, and that's been handled. When it first went in, I was like, cool, it's in. I like it. I didn't think it was too overdone, but you guys did tone it down. I do enjoy it. I will really enjoy it once cracking and or some type of, even more. It'll be interesting to see how much, obviously. But I liked it in general. But what other types of immersion features, are you guys considering? Because when we talked to Russ last time, it was like, well, what would you guys like? And if you talk to anybody, when you guys did the 2009 trailer, that whole scene where the mech warrior, the world is falling out from underneath his feet. His mech is saying, GTFO, or you're about to die. Klaxons are going off, and his mech and smoke. Even though it may not add anything to gameplay wise, and or I think people would just, I don't know, squeal like little girls, man. Like, it would be awesome to...
Phil would.
Yeah, I would, yeah. Your mech's getting shot out from underneath you. You just got, you just got taken out. Instead of it just, boom, it goes right to spectator camera, man. It would be awesome to just, that sequence of events just to go on,
Now, of course, Brian, you've mentioned to us before in regards to what Phil's talking about here, ejecting, that you're not going to have, somebody eject like in that trailer going up because of smoke and mirrors and other issues within the gameplay. But Phil is just saying some kind of ejection, something where you're not necessarily going thousands of meters up in the air or whatever.
Yeah, I would love to add more immersion. immersion that way and put in more graphical effects and continue to improve it. I think once we're done with Community Warfare and all the UI work associated with it, we're going to be looking at the HUD and taking an artistic pass on it. That's where we can kind of take our first stab at offering things like that. Because it's just pure immersion at this point, we're still on critical path, so we're still focusing on just prioritizing features that are the most important to getting towards that Community Warfare feature set. And if it's gameplay related, so if it takes engineering time, their time is dedicated elsewhere, and that would. If it's artistic, like the Cockpit glass, we had some free bandwidth in between making mechs, and we're like, hey, let's just get this in. Cockpit glass breaking and shattering, if a gameplay engineer has a little bit of time just to put in the hooks, doing the effects and things like that wouldn't take that long. So, I think I would encourage somebody to create a nice post, if it's not already up on the forums, about what they'd like to see, and we can kind of create a wish list and build towards that.
Now, is that all client side? I know the cockpits are client side as far as it loading. It's not server side. If you were to add effects, would that be the same case?
Anything, yeah, for the most part, effects, yes, are client side. I think there was a post that Matt Craig put up recently about weapon hit and hit detection, how you would see explosions, think you've hit something, but really the server has said nope. So client, the effects are driven by the client just to minimize the bandwidth, so you can kind of get erroneous feedback there. But yes, it would.
So, speaking of new additions to the game and immersion and so forth, base turrets were recently added. What's been the general feedback so far on base turrets?
Well, both that and the base revamp have been, pretty positive. I think you're starting to get a taste of some additional strategy within the game, which is fun. I think here's a nemesis, a non-player interactive object that you gotta pay attention to, and this is just just the first little bit in our first kind of test of where we're going with bases for the planetary assault modes, attack and defend. We really want to bring in those ancillary objects and kind of push a little bit more into that total warfare BattleTech concept, where there's other stuff on the battlefield to worry about. And also, we're kind of building towards that fortification mentality where players, when they do take control of a planet, they're going to want to invest some time in their base to make sure that it's got the best defenses and the best equipment, because when they go up against another team, you're going to want that extra firepower at your disposal.
I've run into them a few times, and you quickly realize taking unnecessary damage. You're like, oh, screw this. Let the long-range missile boats bombard the damn things, and not to get in too close. Now, obviously, you guys introduced them, and they're not totally OP. You guys took a very similar approach to when you introduced the consumable airstrikes and artillery strikes. Are there any future types of AI or even new types of turrets being introduced that are going to be even more lethal, I guess?
We're going to look at implementing as many of the weapon types as possible, ammo-based, obviously energy-based, missile-based, ECM potentially to help create protective bubbles to protect your base. Really, at the end, you just kind of nailed it there. What it does is it creates a need for the scout to go out and lock that turret and get rid of it. And the missile boat's the perfect role to do that. And so we're trying to continue to improve our role warfare pillar. We're always going to be working on it. For as long as we're working on this game, we're going to be working on every single pillar. But it does really add to that pillar, because now there's another strategy. Like you said, it's an attrition battle. The minute you take 1 point of damage from a turret, you're at a disadvantage over the opposing team. So it's really important that players start adapting their tactics to deal with this other threat. And as we slowly introduce them, right, and we're slowly balancing them, we kept them low powered for now. We'll slowly increase their power based on how the game balance is going, and obviously we'll add more tactics and different types of turrets and different maps. The smaller maps will keep it to shorter range turrets, and the bigger maps we can explore longer range turrets, which will then up the overall strategy and increase the need for players to adapt based on the map that they're playing, which will feed into the launch module and mech selection.
Now, looking, maybe further down the road than anytime soon, have you guys ever thought about like an actual mobile HQ, something maybe like an escort mission or something that's moving that interacts with the match?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have endless designs, endless ideas for matches and things like that. The key is just to slowly introduce them at a rate that makes sense, that doesn't destabilize the gameplay. And that's why we look to refresh the existing modes and add more depth to them rather than adding a new mode. So that's why we added turrets and such to Assault, was to kind of make the mode a little bit more complex and a little bit more engaging. When we add attack defend, again, same thing. It'll be an asymmetrical game mode, so there's going to be a defender and an attacker, and just that strategy will change how people use their mechs and builds and loadouts. So
one of the things that pops in my head is Battlefield 4 has this train that goes across, and it's a capture point. And so the first thing that popped to my mind was, either on River City, you've got that, or Alpine or something. I could see like a train, or something being to where it goes from one end to the other, and you have to.
One of the maps actually has a train track going through it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of the, you've got Canyon Network and stuff, and so that's as soon as I thought about, an actual mobile HQ is for gameplay, features like that, and. So I guess we'll see more with Attack and Defend, and obviously we'll get more info when we get a little bit closer to that. But the next topic is sort of in depth here, so we want to go dive into this. You guys introduced the Tier 1 weapon modules. So the next question we have is, are there plans for any other types of weapon modules beyond just range modifiers?
Yeah, we're just scratching the surface on the weapon modules. Again, these are gameplay items. We want to be very careful how we introduce them into the ecosystem. We don't want to mess with the metagame in some dramatic way. So we're taking a very, very staggered, careful approach. We do have ideas outside of just range modifiers, more flavor modifiers and things like that, functionality modifiers. We're exploring them right now. And once we get through this initial set of Tier 1 weapons, then we'll start looking at those more specialized features, feature modules that will be applied to weapons and other aspects, equipment and things like that. So we definitely have ideas. They're definitely in the pipe, and now that we've kind of started this process, it's a new form of content for the player to consume, and we plan to keep adding them on a regular basis.
Okay, so this sort of leads into the lengthy part, if you will. Do you guys foresee any changes to the overall module system? In the past, you guys have talked about possibly actually having specific modules, like for instance, you have X amount of weapon module slots per mech, and you have X amount of sensor and targeting, and you have to choose, because right now obviously you have 3 or 4 or 5, and you can put anything on there. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, absolutely. We have an entire plan. This is phase 1, just getting more weapon modules out there. The next phase obviously is adding more content. And then the third phase is going to be overhauling the module system concept as a whole. Right now, we want to separate consumables from modules. We want to make consumables their own entity. They have their own place, and so we don't want to kind of mix those two together. It was kind of a temp solution. And it had gameplay balance associated with it. You had to kind of make a strategic choice between a module and something that got consumed. But we really feel, based on the usage of consumables, people like them. They use them a lot. So we want to give them their own home, and we want you to kind of make choices for consumables. So here's a certain number of slots for those, and you have to make a decision on what you're going to bring with respect to those. And we want to go back to the original vision for modules, which is imagine like a circuit board, right? You're plugging in functionality into your mech, ability functionality. So we want to get back to that pure essence of what the module system is. And what that means is exactly that, slots. So say a type 1, type 2, type 3, 4, 5, module slot, and say weapons are type 3. And depending on the mech, you might have 2 type 3s, 3 type 3s. So it also allows us to add flavor, what we call micro flavor and micro role warfare into these mechs. We can further distinguish each variant from another by changing up the modules. So yes, much deeper, much more robust, and many more modules will be able to be equipped to mechs. How many exactly and how many types we're still working out. But it's definitely something we as soon as we started designing the tier 1 weapon modules, we're like, we need more. This is, the people are not going to sacrifice the power that they have in their current modules and the consumables for some of these tiers. However, the long-term vision for the metagame, we'll see players needing all of it.
I was going to say, you just said it right on the nail on the head there. Why trade a Arty Strike for a tier 2, tier 3, medium laser range boost? And I think that's, it was a big concern when it first came out. It's like, why should I give this up when these are on the battlefield more powerful right now? And I think that's why, you guys mixing up the modules and actually making specific ones for, like, hey, you can take this many, you have to choose which consumable you want. Then also you have your weapons, you have your size, you have those sensor and stuff. And it actually puts an emphasis on, you don't have to sacrifice, you don't have to choose, one or the other, because the consumables right now seem like the go-to. They're better on the battlefield as overall doing like damage or effectiveness. But you guys are wanting all of them, or at least a wide variety, to be able to choose and actually be used.
Yeah, the interesting thing about consumables too is they become quite the more of the end game content. New players with, say, less than 100 matches under their belt, they're not using them as much because C-bills are still quite valuable to them in terms of buying equipment, buying mechs and technology. So it definitely, on the players who've been around a while, they have a stockpile of C-bills. It's good. They're going to use consumables right now. But a newer player, the GXP costs to actually improve their weapons, which means they're outputting more DPS. The tier 1 weapon modules are definitely designed for that. If you were to think of a level system, say between level 1 and 50, they're for the people who are in, level 1 to 15. That's what they're designed for, right? They're not designed for yourself or anybody who's played more than 1,000 matches. You wouldn't use these things because they just don't offer the same power value or bang for the buck.
Cool. Now, will module costs ever be re-examined? For example, for me, for Phil, some people, it'd be more convenient to buy 20 modules at, say, 1 million C-bills as opposed to 1 or 2 at 6 million and having to switch them around. Is that something you guys have considered?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That we'll rebalance all the pricing once we get to that new system, and then this is all again kind of building towards our level system, where we're having things keyed to hitting certain levels, so you get that sense of progression. The reason why we only released tier 1, we actually have tier 2, 3, 4, 5 already done, is that we can't release them until we get the level system in. But all of the things we've released, you'd actually, Phil, you might make a case for a tier 5 weapon module that we already have designed over that Arty Strike. You might be like, that 2.5% or whatever, I can't remember the exact number, but whatever that is, that's actually going to be comparable to having that Arty Strike over time. So I might choose that. But because they're just tier 1 and they are designed for that lower level player, you won't see it yet.
Gotcha. Yeah, and in regards to the choosing one side or the other, we've talked, we have Tyler, one of the top tier players out there in comp teams, SJR, and I've talked to a bunch of them, and it's like, well, would you take these over? And as of right now, they don't, and so that's why, again, coming back to you guys changing how modules are handled, and like, hey, you can take an Arty Strike, but you'll because you have to choose, then you'll have weapon modules as well that you can choose. So they'll actually be used, and there'll be a benefit to having them. And then they can also choose within those as far as there's going to be range. I'm assuming there'll be probably, I'm gonna assume some type of fire rate or something. Can you touch on that? I mean, what kind of, right now we have range that increases your effective range, but also increases your heat. Is there any other examples of what are coming?
Yeah, we're designing modules for all the main mechanics: refire rate, refresh time, range, heat, and there'll always be a balance. So generate less heat, reduce range, as an example, right? Or more range, more heat. So there's always going to be a trade-off between the two. And the problem with that, and the reason why we were careful, is we don't want to create two modules that negate each other. So you equip both modules, and you're basically at a value of 1. Right, so we have to be careful adding.
That's something I would totally do.
Yeah, so we have to be careful, and there's ways we can do that. We can mitigate it by making sure, like, even within a weapon, there's types. So you can only, like the consumables, you can only equip one type 1, one type 2. So we might have to use that same concept to prevent players from basically equipping what equates to a null gain.
I was going to say, one last thing with the modules. You were talking about role warfare earlier. Light mechs. In light mechs, it's one of those things where it's really tough for the light mech. Especially skirmish mode. If you drop as a light mech, information warfare. We've talked about that in the past. Have you guys thought about really, really putting that to, the light mechs and possibly even some of the mediums to where they have a lot more module slots to where they can fit stuff like seismic, and obviously they'll have the ability to have a consumable or two, but to really put the emphasis on these are your information gathering mechs?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the module system, to be perfectly honest, the rigidity of BattleTech is incredible, right? Despite having millions and millions of options, it is quite a challenge to work within their systems. So we introduced the module system to allow us to have a metagame, to allow us to add things to the game that fit outside of the canon and don't break the very sensitive, incredibly sensitive tonnage rules and critical space rules that you can't really monkey with because it just breaks everything. And so we focused on how we focus on getting role warfare and information warfare is exactly that. We will start adding more module slots. We can say this Jenner variant is going to have six module slots, and this Jenner variant will have 4, and this assault mech will have 2, and really encourage players to play different roles with different mechs and give the light mech the opportunity, like you said, to carry more equipment that doesn't have to compete for critical space, which is obviously one of the biggest limiting factors of a light mech.
Yeah, the reason I bring this up is, off the top of my head, you have the chassis like the Raven 3L or even the Firestarter or Jenner, some that don't need help right now at all. Obviously, they're perfectly fine. But then you do have the mechs that don't get as much love, the Raven 2X and the 4X and some of the other ones where you could see where just giving them slight buffs is, module slots may, entice someone to take those because they're allowed, they're able to gather a little bit more info, have a little bit more of awareness of what's going on, or play a slightly different role on the battlefield, which, offsets the shortcomings of, maybe not having ECM, or that maybe they can't have as much firepower or jump jets and stuff.
More options and more customization, essentially, that would allow.
Yes, most definitely. All right, so moving on, you guys are shooting for, as far as the last date we've seen, March 4th, DirectX 11. Can you give us, first off, will DirectX 11 mean SLI and Crossfire support as far as it coming?
Not out the gates, but as we go, after the initial release, we'll be able to add in more support for that.
Okay, and then what changes, if any, should the average player expect to see with the implementation of DirectX 11? What is regular Joe Schmo? What does this mean to them?
Honestly, it's not a whole lot. Some people will experience performance boost depending on their machines. If you're running Windows 8, you're going to have better compatibility. It just, overall, the CryEngine that we're using, the version we're using, it doesn't have a fully implemented DX11 pipeline, so it's kind of halfway there. The glitz and glam of DX11, like the particles and some other things that Matt Craig's much better qualified to talk about, those will come online later, but because they're just cosmetic, we're not implementing those right away. There are performance, like I said, upgrades, and I'm butchering it, so I'm not going to say it, and I much prefer Matt Craig comment on it, but there will be a demographic that will get extra benefit, but for the average player, it's probably going to be doing business as usual.
Gotcha. So obviously my next follow-up are there any benefits behind the scenes for you guys specifically?
There are some benefits if we only had to support DirectX 11, but now we have to support both, which means more dev time and more costs. So it's kind of a mixed bag. We can move towards more features and more cool effects, but we still now have to test 2 pipelines, which just means everything takes longer.
All right, moving on to the next topic, which is the achievement system. Could you give us a basic breakdown, a general breakdown of the upcoming achievement system? Like, how will it affect the player experience overall?
Well, what it does is it creates a pretty cool engagement feature. So you basically have mini challenges, and these are challenges. They're passive in nature, so you don't really have to do anything. You don't have to choose to do the achievement. It will just happen in the background, and they're basically statistic counters. Most of them surround things like get 10 kills, get 20 kills, get 100 kills, get 100 kills in the assault mech, things like that. So they're just mini goals that you try to achieve each match. And if you've ever played any Xbox game or PS3 or PS4 or Xbox One, any console game, you're probably familiar with the achievement system. Is meet a condition, get a reward. And these rewards can be pretty much anything. Our new store system and our new redeem system allows us to gift the player almost anything in our inventory, which is really cool. So we'll be able to do like mechs if we want to. But right now we're focused on the very basic ones, like I said, the kill counters and the assists, and you'll get GXP and C-bill rewards for completing those achievements. I just looked at it today. It was really cool. The UI is almost done. In UI 2.0, it's a list view, kind of like the Pilot Lab. You'll be able to go in, look at an achievement, see your current status. So if you need to kill 10 mechs, you'll show you've killed 4 of 10. Once you complete it, you'll see the completion status, and then you'll unlock the ability to do the next achievement. If you do complete it while you're in game, you get a little flash on the HUD. It's very subtle, so for all those sim guys, it's not going to go bad in your face like Call of Duty or some other games. It's a little bit more tasteful. And then also, if for some reason you don't see that, it also shows up in the front end, and so players will be able to kind of challenge themselves to these achievements. And it going down the road, it really offers us just a reason to come back and play the game on a regular basis, because we can add new content. That's what's fun about it. It's just another way to give players something to do.
I like that what you just said. I don't like the way COD and them do it, where you have to hit a certain level just to unlock a damn weapon. That just frustrates the crap out of me playing these games. It's like, and obviously in MWO we have all the weapons, we have all the mechs, so that's good. Jason?
Yeah, real quick, is there any plan to maybe front load some of these achievements so that new players can come in and get a C-bill boost right up front when it's really critical for them? Because a lot of the grind hits new players the hardest when it comes to affording that mech, and maybe even figuring out what mech they want to take. So is there any way to kind of not only reward them up front with C-bills, but maybe kind of drop those breadcrumbs early in their play experience so they keep coming back?
Yeah, that's part of what we call the FTUE, a very technical term, and so fun to say, the FTUE, first time user experience. The achievement system was people have asked us that question, hey, why don't you have a tutorial, blah, 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 other than what we already have? And it's been waiting for the achievement system, because what it allows us to do is exactly what you said, breadcrumb the player, that new player. And I can say, okay, go play your first match. Ooh, awesome. Here's a laser for you. Bad example, but you know what I mean. Go play 10 matches. Okay, here's 1,000,000 C-bills. Okay, play your 15th match. Guess what? Here's a mech for you. Here's your starter mech. It allows us to do those kind of things like you described, and allows us to really make that FTUE a rewarding, engaging experience. And it allows us to give those core players, the guys that have like 10,000 matches, I can actually give you a significant reward now. I can actually give you, the gold mechs that we're offering up for sale are just the tip of the iceberg for what we can do with the achievement system, and giving players who dedicated themselves to a certain role or a certain class of mech. I can say, you're like the champion of light mechs. Here, this is an achievement you've done. Here's an amazing reward that's unique. And so now you're going to have, and this is going to kind of date me a little bit, going back to EverQuest days, getting your epic sword. For all those people who've ever played it will understand what I'm talking about. This was a multi-month quest that took 30 people plus to get it for you. We want
many patient friends. You needed lots of friends.
Very many patient friends, yeah. And so that's what I'm going for with this achievement systems. I want, as we add more and more content, we're really going to give players that amazing goal to achieve at the end of the rainbow.
I was going to say, I've talked to quite a lot of people, and they were sitting on a large amount of C-bills. they had played over and over, but financially they weren't able to put any money towards the game just because of, real life stuff. And, but yet they continually come back and continually play. And unfortunately, they weren't really able to, be rewarded. Like, for instance, hey, totally understand you guys have to make your money selling MC and stuff, but keeping some of these players here, it'd be awesome to see incentives, like you said. Maybe, hey, you just hit 2,000 matches. Here's a mech bay. Boom, that person that's been sitting on a stockpile is now able to have 5 mechs, 6 mechs, 7 mechs. And as they progress forward, I think that would be a great incentive for people that may not necessarily be able to financially dump money into the game. But you're saying, hey, we appreciate you being a customer and you being a part of the system, because we do need people to put in the time, right? And I think that would be awesome to be able to see something like that in game.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. And again, like all of our systems, once they're built, we just scratch the surface on them, and we'll be able to add content to it. Now, one thing to note about the achievement system is, because it's stats based and we want to have everybody enjoy the achievement system, not just unlock everything the day it comes out, we do have to do a stat reset and archive. So what we're going to do is we're still deciding on the final methodology and if this is going to become a regular thing or not, whether we do it by seasons or years. But what we are going to do is, up until that point, we are going to archive everybody's stats. They'll be able to still see it. They'll be able to still say, hey, this is my, my first 18 months of Mech Warrior Online stats. But you will be set back to 0 when we release the achievement system. And players will now have to collect everything again. So that for anybody who's wanted to reset their stats, great. For all those people who are like, gonna say, oh no, I have great stats, we apologize. It's a necessary evil, but you will always have your stats that you've earned up to that point and always be able to see them. We're just going to decide how that's going to happen.
A quick follow-up, you mentioned that basically the system is in now to where you can give people rewards like mechs and C-bills or maybe MC, whatever. Is that something that's going to be... When can we expect to see that in the store, to where we can gift friends or colleagues or whatever, that kind of stuff?
It's pretty close to being ready. We can't gift MC, and there's some accounting reasons for it. So we can gift in-game items, but for tax laws and tax reasons, it gets a little squirrely when we have to handle the currency. So that part won't be available. However, when it comes to gifting a mech to a friend, we're very, very close to the functionality. It's already in the back end. We just have to create an interface in the front end for it.
Awesome. And that concludes part 2 of the interview with Brian Ekman. Look for part 3 tomorrow.
It'd be best if you avoid me, but I know you probably can't. You sense something is wrong with me. You can feel it on my skin, but there is more with it. Maybe I can be closer now, but I don't know how. Please don't remove my metal skin. My metal skin. My metal skin. And the wires within. You probably thought it was normal, just a little off. The truth is that one time I was, but now I'm a robot. Forever